This is HuffPost Live. I'm Mike Sachs, and the real estate website Zillow.com recently shook up the market by making homes in the process of foreclosure easily searchable for everyday buyers. The move may be smart business, but how does it impact the people who may be losing their homes? Joining me to discuss this, we have Will Surtak, who lost his home due to foreclosure. We have Jed Smith, an economist for the National Association of Realtors. Roy Oppenheim, an attorney focusing on Florida foreclosure defense, and Stephanie Walker, a foreclosure victim and the author of Love in the Time of Foreclosure. Roy, on that point of privacy, how do you respond to that? This idea that perhaps someone underwater could feel humiliated by being outed unintentionally or without their consent to all their neighbors and their family?
Just to give you some context, I'm a foreclosure defense attorney. I've represented hundreds and hundreds of families in Florida since '07 who are in foreclosure. So first of all, let's understand that this information is public information. It's of the public record, and it's not privacy. It's not secret. It's kind of, I look at it, being in foreclosure today is kind of like being in a divorce. I mean, in the old days, maybe there was some scorn associated with being divorced, but today there's no moral outrage to someone who decides to get a divorce, and there's no moral outrage for someone who's going to go into foreclosure. The reason they're in foreclosure, as Will said before, is because of a systemic pattern of corruption that occurred on Wall Street. And since the banks, to the most part, are the ones who are responsible, a lot of people find it perfectly okay to be in foreclosure and ultimately engage the bank in some sort of loss mitigation process. So I really don't have much of a problem with Zillow, particularly because Zillow is not including the people's names. They're just giving the property address. I think we want to probably hear from Jed, because Jed's probably going to be the one who's going to say that he doesn't like it, only because it's the realtors who are going to be hurt. The realtors are kind of like the travel agents here. You know, the last time I booked a flight, I didn't use a travel agent. You know, my kids don't even know what travel agents are anymore. And to a large extent, Zillow may be in the process of neutralizing the role of travel agents, as of realtors when it comes to short sales. Because if this information is published, then in fact, I mean, look at the presidential election. The election is not talking about this crisis. It's not talking about people in foreclosure, because the bottom line is this is going to have to get resolved ultimately through the free market. It's not going to get resolved through government. And because of that, what Zillow is doing is just trying to remove the friction that we may have between a likely buyer and seller in the context of distressed real estate. So I have to say that this is an interesting experiment. It's part of the American experiment, and I can't say that there's any privacy issues that are associated with Zillow's decision here.
There's no way that I would have been completely open to somebody knocking on my door or calling me up. I would think it would have to be knocking on my door. I don't know how they'd get my phone number, but knocking on my door and saying, I see you've missed your payments. I would love to buy your house. And then I would not have dealt with them without my realtors. Like, this is, to me, a legitimacy issue. I was really fearful of people preying upon us. And I would definitely say paranoid. I blogged about it on my blog, Love in the Time of Foreclosure, but I never listed our address. You know, my whole idea was I advocate sharing the situation with people. For people who are in this situation, I feel like it is a really good idea to let your friends and family know what you're dealing with. What I don't like is that suddenly now you're out there. I just feel like there's this level of vulnerability that already exists, and it is so hard to know what that feels like unless you're actually going through it yourself. And I give our realtors great credit for trying to understand what we were going through and helping us so much through the process. And navigating the whole short sale world before anybody really knew what it was, and before the banks were really accustomed to it. Now it's kind of a regular thing that's happening. So if that can be a plus side for this, I think that's fantastic. I mean, that would be great. I just I definitely see it from a different point of view, which is more emotional.
Yeah. And were you receiving a bunch of calls when you're going through the process? Were you getting all sorts of kind of predatory things happening to you?
Yeah, and in the mail. I mean, I know it was a big concern. Like, are people going to be looking in our windows now that because yes, it's public record. It's always been public record. Zillow isn't making information public that hasn't been public. It's just way, 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 way more accessible. You used to have to go to a courthouse and dig through the documents, or sign up for a service where you paid a fee and got those listings. Now I can just look on my smartphone on my Zillow app and on a map see all these little dots and homes that are, you know, behind payments, and be a snoopy neighbor if I want to be. And that's, I guess, more of that it's maybe naive of me because that's the way the world is going with our access to information. I think more than anything, I just want homeowners who are behind in their payments to just have this information, to know that their information is on Zillow so that they can share with their family and friends and neighbors before they find out through randomly looking on Zillow or something like that. I think that it just needs to be made known and made aware.
Go ahead, Roy.
And not to be a spoil sport, but I mean, and by the way, I have a license to sell real estate also. Almost everyone does in the state of Florida. All you have to do is be a high school graduate, and you don't even have to graduate from a high school. You can have an equivalency. So, my concern for Mike is he says there's all this data out there. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. The realtors, and as again, I said, I am a licensed real estate salesperson, have controlled this information, and what Zillow has done, for better or worse, it's opened that information. In terms of privacy, as Stephanie's mentioned, I mean, you get tons of letters when you're in foreclosure. You get tons of letters from my colleagues who want to represent my clients because that's how they think they're going to find clients is by sending them solicitations. You're in foreclosure, I can help. You get 10 of those. Then you got a bunch of letters from folks who are going to try and quote unquote be angels, and they're going to rip you off, and they're going to be scamsters, and you're going to get that. So, I mean, Zillow is just legitimizing this information so that people who are on either side of the fence, in fact, have a sense of creating a real marketplace that will eliminate some of the friction that we have so that we can get back to where we once were. I mean, the fact that this information doesn't flow as freely as it does is a problem with the entire real estate information flow and market structure that we've had. And the realtors will try and hang on to it for as long as they possibly can. And Zillow, in an interesting way, is both working with the realtors in the sense that they allow realtors to advertise, but they've provided tons of information that historically was completely unavailable unless you had a realtor.
Yeah, go ahead, Will.
Yeah, Roy, I think what we're dealing with, again, is a larger problem. We're legitimizing the systematic deletion of the middle class here. Again, it's a larger moral issue. And we're spending tax dollars in having these banks take over these homes and sell them to developers, and we're stratifying our class.
What's the rate of predation for these types of listings, whether online or elsewhere that's more freely available? What's the rate of people that Will's talking about coming in and buying 100 houses, flipping them, making themselves richer at the expense of those who are currently living in a house getting a raw deal on the sale price? Is this a rampant thing? Is this an epidemic in the housing market?
I don't see it as an epidemic. What I do see is that you do have some investors out there that have systematized the process, but we also have clients on the flip side besides our foreclosure defense clients. We have middle class clients, we have policemen, firemen, maybe a young doctor who wants to buy one of these foreclosures, and they have the good sense to hire an attorney to then assist them in that process. Just like if someone's in foreclosure, they shouldn't be first hiring a realtor, they should be first hiring an attorney so they can get advice not just on how to sell a home, but on how to save the home. And so they can first figure out how to save the home, how to modify it, if a short sale is appropriate, if they should be going bankrupt. I mean, there's so many different possibilities and permutations in every particular situation that one of the permutations, of course, is that you may want to do a short sale. But that's just one factor of many, many other factors. So we don't see it as pervasive. But I do think from a middle class perspective, Will, that on occasion you get a middle class person who normally couldn't afford to live in a particular neighborhood sees the other person's misfortune, as unfortunate as it may be, including your misfortune. But someone else may be able to benefit, and they don't have to be someone who's in the upper class. They could be someone who's trying to break into the middle class.
I've really appreciated talking to all of you about this. It's been a really good conversation. It's helped bring some nuance to a story that came to our attention just recently, and I really want to thank each of you. So Will, Jed, Roy, Stephanie, I hope to talk to you all again soon. This has been good, so thanks a lot. This is HuffPost Live. The conversation will continue.